Jager. I'm an activist, yogi, ethnopharmacologist, and the herbal facet of the original Organic India crew. Welcome to another Herb Video Journal. This one is on GMOs. Today is July 25th, 2012. It's the day out of time, and we're here at a GMO symposium that's focused on getting the vote in November passed for GMO labeling. With me is Jeffrey Smith. He's the author of Seeds of Deception. He's one of the world's experts on GMOs, and he's one of the world's greatest activists of protecting people and entire ecosystems against the harmful effects of GMOs. So Jeffrey, thanks for having this interview.
Sure.
And a few questions.
Sure.
What is a GMO?
Well, a GMO, genetically modified organism, you take genes from one species and force it into the DNA of other species. So you can take bacterial genes from soil bacteria and put it into corn so that the corn actually produces its own toxic insecticide called Bt toxin to break open the stomach of insects to kill them. Or you take another bacteria and you stick it into soybeans so that the soybeans can be sprayed with Roundup. They're called Roundup Ready soybeans, and they drink the Roundup. It ends up inside the soybeans and inside us if we eat the soybeans. Now, you have obvious problems with what's inserted, what it produces, but even the process of insertion itself and the cloning afterwards can cause massive collateral damage to the plant DNA, which can increase things like allergens, toxins, carcinogens, or anti-nutrients, and these are some of the problems of genetically modified organisms.
So how are they negatively influencing the environment, ecosystem, and us?
Well, the ecosystem is crazy. I mean, there's been about 527 million pounds more herbicide sprayed on these herbicide-tolerant crops, and the herbicide is now like Roundup. It's in the air samples, in the rain samples, in the water samples in the Midwest where I'm from. It's in the urine of city dwellers. It's in the fetal blood. It's in our blood. It's terrible. The Bt toxin also is found. It disrupts the ecosystem of marine life, etc., and also the soil organism ecology is completely disrupted by these GM crops and the associated chemicals. Then you have the target insects die from the insecticide, but the non-target insects can have a problem. There's suggestions that GMOs might be exacerbating the loss of the bees, etc. What I focus on primarily, however, is the health of humans when they eat GMOs, and that's really serious.
And so what's happening there?
Well, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine said that the animal feeding studies show things like reproductive disorders, immune system problems, accelerated aging, organ damage, gastrointestinal problems, and dysfunctional regulation of cholesterol and insulin. Now, these same categories that are found in animals that are compared to controls, they're on the GM, the others are in the non-GM, they're the same type of disorders that the veterinarians and livestock owners tell us that when they take their animals off of GMOs, these things get better. The ulcers, the bloat, the diarrhea, the infertility, even the farmers say their animals are happier and they're behaving better. In fact, there was one doctor that was describing the behavioral and physiological changes in animals that were fed GMOs, and an autism specialist came up and said, this is exactly what we're seeing in autistic children. Now that brings us to the human situation. There's now thousands of doctors prescribing non-GMO diets to patients, and so we're interviewing the doctors and interviewing the patients, and it turns out autism symptoms seem to improve, irritable bowel, colitis, allergies, weight problems, skin problems, migraine headaches, a whole host of problems are seeming to be either alleviated completely or improved. Now, it's the same category as those which are improved in the livestock, but they're found problems with those in the lab animals, and they're the type of disorders that are on the rise in the U.S. population since 1996, when genetically modified soy and corn, principally, were introduced into the American diet.
And why isn't the government doing something?
Well, the government has been bought and sold, so to speak, by primarily Monsanto, the biggest biotech company. Monsanto, their former attorney was in charge of policy at the FDA when the policy came out, and the
Monsanto lawyer was in charge of the FDA policy.
They created a new position for him, recruited him from the law firm that was Monsanto's law firm. He then oversaw the policy, which is the current policy today, which claims falsely that the agency is not aware of information showing that GMOs are significantly different. On that basis, no testing was necessary, no labeling was necessary. The same company, Monsanto, that told us that PCBs, Agent Orange, and DDT were safe, can put GMOs in the market without telling the FDA or consumers. Now, Michael Taylor, this former Monsanto attorney, then became Monsanto's lobbyist and is now back at the FDA as the U.S. food safety czar. The person I think who's responsible for more food-related illnesses in human history is now in charge of food safety in the United States.
So what can people do about this?
Well, I think the first thing people want to do is avoid GMOs to get out of the uncontrolled experiment. So go to non-GMOshoppingguide.com. non-GMOshoppingguide.com, as well as the iPhone application Shop No GMO, have thousands of products which have been verified as non-GMO. But I think if enough people avoid GMOs, and I'm only talking about 5% of U.S. shoppers, that should be sufficient to create a tipping point of consumer rejection, turning GMOs into a marketing liability, as happened in Europe. And we're on our way for that. As that is percolating and more people are concerned about GMOs, a natural desire for labeling emerges in the collective consciousness, and so in the last year we've seen expressions of that where 20 different states have had legislation introduced for GMO labeling, always knocked down by Monsanto's lobbyists and influence peddling, and even threats to states for lawsuits. But in California, Prop 37 allows for mandatory labeling of GMOs if voted on by the citizens. So if people stop believing the lies by the biotech industry, oh, Prop 37 is going to raise your grocery bill, that's complete nonsense. It's more of the lies. It's going to force companies to say if they're using GMOs, they're going to tell you, like they tell the people in 50 other countries. So the same companies like Kraft and Nestle's and Hershey's that label products in other countries that are genetically modified do not do it here and get it into our diet stealth and without telling the truth.
Right. So what's the names of these apps?
Okay, Shop No GMO. Shop No GMO is the iPhone app. It's free. And non-GMOshoppingguide.com. Now, we also have a website, responsibletechnology.org, where you can sign up for a free newsletter, be a click and send revolutionary and pass it on and post it. We have a Tipping Point network where you can get involved in education and advocacy in your area. We have free online videos. In fact, there's a new documentary which we're creating called Genetic Roulette, named after my second book, but this is called Genetic Roulette, The Gamble of Our Lives, where we see the people and the veterinarians and the farmers and the scientists and the doctors describing the stories that I just described, and that'll be available in August, and that is what we're contributing as educational information, as background to this very important decision about labeling.
Thank you, Jeffrey, so much.
Sure,
thank you so much. So people, you hear it. Get the apps, spread the word, make sure you vote, make sure you tell everybody you know in California to vote. So thank you very much. This is another Herb Journal brought to you by the Pacific Center of Ayurveda and Organic India. Thanks and fare thee well.